Don't mention anime!
Anyone that applied to come next year, you'll know by now if you got through the first stage. And if
Yay!
Yay!
Congrats!
Yes, congrats if you got through the first stage. And so I remember me last year at this point was freaking out about my interview, so one of the things I did the most was search on YouTube for people like me talking about their experience, so I'm just going to do the same thing today. I brought Tanya along with me, my wonderful assistant.
Hello.
So you
Excuse
can...
me?
Just kidding, BB.
Uh-huh.
So you can get a perspective from two different people. We're both from the UK, so we both had our interview in the UK. Tanya had hers in London, mine was in Edinburgh. I can't speak to what the interview process is like in other countries, but there's actually quite a lot of videos for other countries' interview processes. And also, it might change from year to year, so don't take what I say and what Tanya says to be, this is exactly what will happen in your interview.
The motto of the JET program is every
situation is different.
And that includes right now, boys and girls. If you're not sick of that motto by now, you fucking will be in about 2 months.
I mean, where is the lie?
Straight up. Oh, they said it was a meme, but it's truly a way of life.
Lol. I'm pretty sure I've said it a few times in my videos now as well.
Honestly, like it's straight up not a meme anymore. It's just true.
So first we're going to talk about what we did to prepare for our interviews and kind of advice we can give for that. So do you want to start, or should I just go?
Either's fine.
Alright, so basically for me, the main piece of advice I have is two things. One, make a list of all the possible questions that you can think you'll be asked. So watch more videos like this one, not just mine, and research like online, like Google it, find other blogs and stuff. Make as long a list as you can, and then basically the key is, I know it sounds simple, but practice. Practice till you hate everything about the JET program. Like I would literally be on the bus on the way to work every day with my list of questions, going over answers in my head. I would get so many people to practice with me. That's another thing. Get as many people as you can to help you. Like, I got my boss to help me, my dad, my colleague. I got my friend's dad to help, my best friend's dad to help me. And I've known him since I was 4. And he's like a lovely guy. But he's quite intimidating. Like, he was like a politician and a professor. And he's like,
my God,
he is by far the most clever person I know by like an insane amount.
Fair.
And he treated the whole, like it was just him in the house when I turned up. And he treated the whole thing like a real interview, like from the second I walked in, he's like, okay, if you could just take a seat and we'll be with you in a moment and stuff. And I was just like, okay.
Oh man.
Literally, I'm getting flashbacks. But it was really helpful. And I think the most important thing about the most important reason for getting different people to help you is that everyone will have their own style of interviewing. And it's good to have, like, to not just get used to one style. Because you don't know what the actual interviewers will be like on the day.
How many interviews did you have in your day? I know it's slightly off topic.
No, that's fine. I think I had 4.
You had 4?
It was 3 or 4. Honestly, I can only remember 2 of them. But yeah, no, in summary, just practice lots as much as you can with as many people as you can. Because I always thought I was shit at interviews. But honestly, I realised that I did just never properly prepared for one before, because I was really nervous leading up to the interview. But I practiced so much that on the day, I was not remotely nervous, to the point that I was nervous about the fact I wasn't nervous, if that makes sense.
Oh, that's meta.
Like, it was weird. But that's the thing is, it's like, I knew all the answers that I needed, and I was like, no matter what they ask me, it's not going to, it might vary a little bit from what I have on my list, but it's not going to vary wildly, and I'll be able to take some answer I have in my answer bank and tweak it and make it work. And I knew the answers all very well, so I would never just rambled or made something up on the spot. Like, I kind of just knew what I was doing. So that's my advice anyway. So how did you prepare? Because I know that you're much more of a spontaneous person.
I mean, yeah. So I didn't actually do any practices. I guess I googled like JET questions, but you have to remember that when you see those answers and those questions, it's not just you seeing it, it's all the hundreds, thousands of other participants who are seeing that. So even if you find those questions, like, don't read the answers, don't read the sample answers, because they're not your answers and they're super generic, and realistically, Like, if you do say it, you and everyone else, and they're gonna have heard this like 50 times, 100 times.
Yeah, I think it's really important to make sure that you believe what you say in your answer. I mean, there's maybe some things you should avoid or some things you should try and get in there, but don't say anything if you don't mean it, because I feel like that's gonna come across if you're just repeating something you heard.
Can I interject?
Yeah.
This is very important. Don't mention anime.
Yeah, I was gonna say that at some point.
Just like, forget whatever Jakub said about practicing with like your politician, professor, uncle friend. Don't mention anime. The only exception to that rule is if you are like an animator or you're a comic book artist.
I think I also mentioned in my video about advice for the application process is that they don't care about what you're excited to see and do for fun in Japan. What they want to know, the Japanese government is paying for the program, and they want to know why you would benefit them to be there. Basically, your main advice, or at least what you did, was you just kind of googled the questions and stuff.
I googled the questions, and after that, I had
Did you like pre-think answers, or
sort of? I tried not to like pre-think answers as opposed to like actually write down points. Like I actually read my personal statement again.
That's really good advice, because the thing is, like, they will sit there and they'll have it in front of them, your application, and they'll have, or at least for me, I could see they'd marked off points they wanted to bring up and stuff. So you need to know your application inside out.
Like, one thing that they try and do to kind of help you stand out is that they will always ask you one or two kind of unique questions, because that's what they get from reading your personal statement. So I guess sit down, read your personal statement, try and figure out, like, if you haven't specifically left a hook or something like that, just go through it and be like, okay, what haven't I not elaborated on? Like, what could they possibly ask me
Yeah, I mean,
about?
you should have put in your application somewhere kind of a unique selling point for yourself, like why you specifically would be good for the program, and they are likely to ask about that, because it's going to be less of a generic question. Yeah. Okay, cool. So I think, in summary, our main advice for preparation between us was...
Don't mention anime.
Don't mention anime. Practice lots.
Don't mention anime.
Yep. If you're going to get people to practice with, get a variety of people to practice with.
It's good to get people that, like, intimidate you.
And also people that maybe have had practice interviewing as well. And one thing I did as well was, whenever I gave people my list of questions, I would tell them to word some of them differently, or throw in a wild question and stuff.
Wild card.
What the? Because even if, like, the question's not relevant, it's good to be practice getting unexpected questions and being able to react under pressure
You
and
will
stuff.
get an unexpected question.
Yeah.
It's always something...
I don't think any of mine were that unexpected, to be fair.
Buddy.
Well, again, we'll get there. Okay, so let's move on now to the actual interview. And something I want to talk about before the part where we actually went into the interviewers was, I knew from seeing on the website or like whatever when they told you about an email, there was going to be a short English test before before the interview, and I'm not gonna lie, I was quite scared for that because I'm shit at English. Like, I know I'm an English teacher, but like English was always one of my weaker subjects at school. The thing is, I googled it and searched on YouTube, but like no one gave advice on that. Everyone talks about the interview, but I couldn't find anyone that really talked about that, and it was really stressing me out. But I guess the reason that no one talks about it is because it's so easy. It's so irrelevant almost.
Like, you gotta remember, like, Jakub said that he's an English teacher, and like, he's kind of wrong. You're not an English teacher, you're an assistant teacher.
Yeah,
and the key part there is assistant, which I am not in this conversation. Just saying.
Okay, see.
The actual test itself is literally 5 minutes long.
It's just a couple questions like mark the error in this sentence, or which of these words is the correct spelling of a certain word or something.
Like, they're not gonna sit there and ask you to describe passives or
I'm pretty sure it's literally just to make sure that you do actually speak English.
like, it's just to make sure you're not goddamn illiterate. Like,
yeah, like, do not panic about it.
Yeah.
Do not panic about it. Because there was only one question I struggled with, and it was like, I can't remember what the word was, but they'd written it 3 times with slightly different spellings. Do you remember the word?
It was pronunciation.
It was
pronunciation.
I just remember I picked one of the spellings that I thought was right, and I googled it afterwards, and I was right. But I honestly think that if I had gotten that wrong, it wouldn't have made a difference.
No,
that's not a big factor to your interview interview decision. Okay, so the actual interview, like I said, I think I had 4 interviewers, but it might have just been 3. When I went in, it depends on the layout of the room where you do it, but for me, they were all quite near the front, sitting in a row, so I went and I shook all of their hands before I went to sit down. And they kind of just talked through very briefly how it was going to work, which is, it's going to be an interview, we're going to ask you questions, and then you'll have the opportunity to ask questions as well, and that was it. In terms of like the process, I'll get into the actual questions in a minute, but
I want to backtrack a little because I know we just went from like the English grammar test to like the actual like interview, but I think it's important to understand and to know that the second you step into the embassy or the consulate or wherever you're going to do your interview, you're being watched.
Yeah, that's a good
You
point.
are fully being watched. Like, you might not think they give a shit, but like that's a very Japanese thing to do, where they're just quite quietly observing and they're making notes in their head. So like, when you were waiting for your interview, were you sat there with anyone?
So initially when I go in, you sit upstairs until they bring you down, and there was one girl I spoke to a little bit who was sitting there, and then I chatted to the security guard for a bit because I'd met him before. But then when you go downstairs, there was someone waiting, and they tell you you're not allowed to talk to anybody in this room. So yeah.
Like, the only reason I bring this up is because I was very aware that as soon as I walked in, the interview starts the second you're inside the consulate. It's really cliche to say that, but like I kind of made sure that as soon as I stepped in there, I was very personable.
Yeah.
Very genki.
And on that, like, I mean, it's a given. I didn't even think to mention it because it's so obvious, but you know, dress formal, wear a suit, or dress
Please.
nice, like formal work attire.
Oh my god, honestly,
the more
it's
formal,
an
the better.
interview. But on Reddit, there was like a whole discussion like, oh, is it okay if I wear a coloured shirt? Like, don't think you have to dress like Japanese business dress. Japanese business dress, if you don't know, is just white shirt, black suit, jacket, skirt, trousers, whatever. Like, okay, like if you want to wear a coloured shirt with like a nice looking skirt, that's fine. That's okay. Like if you want to wear a dress, that's okay. Just make sure it is smart, casual, like the kind of clothes you would wear to work, like if you're working in an office or if you're going to just like a bog standard, job interview.
Yeah.
Like sometimes, I'm like, this isn't like, 100% certified, like good advice, but sometimes even wearing something a bit flashy can help you like stand out a bit. I'm not saying you should go out there and buy like a neon yellow tie with like, I don't know, fucking penguins on it or something.
I wore a tartan tie, I remember, because I was like, oh, representing Scotland.
Yeah, like that's cute. Like it's like it's small personal touches because like, the E in JET stands for exchange. You're there to be like a cultural ambassador, and even doing things like that, I think really helps to put a more solid impression in their minds. Feel like you have to stand out, or don't feel like just you have to wear business dress. Just make sure you're not wearing goddamn jeans. Just back to the point, like as soon as you step into the consulate, embassy, whatever, you're being watched.
Okay, so let's get to the actual questions now that we got.
Yeah.
I don't remember the order of most of them, but I do remember the first question I got, and that was, it was something along the lines of, what would you say to a foreigner who was thinking of coming here?
This goddamn question.
And I remember asking them, do you mean the UK or Scotland or Edinburgh specifically? And it's totally okay to ask questions and clarify stuff.
I think that's a good question
It's a good
to
thing.
ask.
Yeah, because you don't want to go off on a tangent with like what they don't want to hear, and it shows kind of you're proactive or whatever. Anyway, and they said whatever you prefer. So I was like, okay, I'll talk about Edinburgh. And I actually was like, can I stand up? And they were like, yeah, go for it. And I can't remember if they asked me, what would you tell like your
Jakub
class?
Intimidated them with his 194 centimeter height.
Yeah, no, but I can't remember if the question was about what would you tell your kids in school or something. But I think I did speak as if I was speaking to a class, or at least a group of foreigners that didn't have that good English, because I spoke very like clearly and slowly and loudly. I had prepared for a similar question, so I kind of brought that answer out, and I basically talked about how the culture in Scotland is so welcoming. We're so patriotic, but we're so welcoming, and there's people from all over the world here, and especially in August during the festival, the Fringe Festival, it's one of Edinburgh becomes one of the most visited places or events in the world. I believe it's like the third most or something behind some sporting thing. I don't know. Like, I was clearly very passionate about talking about Edinburgh and coming to visit and why I think it's so much fun and like the best time to come and stuff. And I remember the interviewer literally said afterwards, like, "Oh wow, I feel like we should applaud you or something," just because I almost did it as more of a presentation than like an answer to a question. And because that went well, that made me really confident, so I was quite relaxed for most of the interview after that. So they mentioned that I'd put preferences on my application for where I wanted to be placed, because you've had the opportunity to do that.
Yep.
And I put all places near Osaka, because I wanted to be near Osaka, which luckily I got. But basically they said, all your preferences are here. And they basically asked me, what if you don't get here? What if you get some really rural, middle of nowhere place?
That's a real standard question.
Yeah, that's pretty box standard. A lot of people get that. So basically what I said was, I'm going here for the experience of a completely different culture, and I will get that anywhere. Actually, something I mentioned a lot in my application was that I'm a bit of a storyteller, because I did video and stuff, and that's always been an interest of mine. And I kept saying how I'm really excited to go and see like where my story takes me and some motivational bullshit like that. So what I said in my, and I mentioned that in my answer, and I said something like, it might be completely different from what my preferences were, but it's just a different story, and I'm sure it'll be just as exciting, or something like that.
During my interview, when they asked me that, it's like, oh, like, what if you don't get put in Tokyo? I was like, actually, now that I've thought about it, again,
or not.
well, yeah, like, again, the E in fucking JET stands for exchange. Tokyo is a global city, so I feel like me personally being put in Tokyo doesn't really add anything.
Yeah.
And I remember saying that explicitly, like, I really want to see somewhere in Japan, like, that's more kind of suburban, but, like, not Tokyo. Like, Tokyo is like the London of Japan, which is obvious, it's the capital city, but, like, once you've been to one major or capital city, they all look pretty much the same. Just because you get put in a certain, get put in a certain place, you can make a really good, case for it. Doesn't mean you get put there. So I think really, pushing for, saying that you're flexible, saying you've lived abroad or whatever, I think that really helps.
Yeah. The next two questions I had were more specific to my application. So one of them, I'd mentioned that I was studying Japanese, and because I was taking night classes for a few months before I came on the program. And they didn't really ask a question, they kind of just said, so you're studying Japanese, and then they just stared at me and waited for a response. So I was like, oh yeah, no, I basically said something along the lines of, I think it's important to know at least a little bit of the basics, it'll help enhance my experience, that kind of thing. I mean, that's a pretty obvious answer, I'm not going to go into detail on that. The other one though, which was definitely much more specific to me, was that I'd mentioned in my application, I volunteered a few months before to make a video for Japan Fair Glasgow 2017, which is like a charity that runs a big fair to raise money for the people affected by the tsunami and earthquake in 2011. And that was a really fun experience in general. And again, it was very open, they kind of just mentioned it and said, tell us about that. So yeah, I just talked about how I think it's important to use in terms of moving to Japan and my interest in Japan, I think it's important to use the skills I have to do as much as I can, basically. I'm not going to get too into the answer for that, because again, it's very specific to me, so it's not going to be any help. But again, that goes back to know your application, because they'll ask you about it. Just know why you put the things you put.
Yeah.
And I only had one more question, so I'll quickly do that, and then we can move on to Yo.
Finally.
Oh yeah, a very box standard and generic question is, why do you want to go to Japan?
Oh my god,
and
yeah.
this is where you need to avoid talking about anime.
Don't mention anime!
So I basically said, I want to experience...
Anime!
I love anime!
Anime! Sorry.
Yeah.
I want to experience...
I said I want to experience basically the most completely different culture imaginable, because I think that's going to be the most, again, it went back to storytelling, that's going to be the most interesting story for me, and I'll be able to share the most about my own culture, and I'll be able to get the most out of it, and I'll certainly find it the most interesting. And then I said I did look at a few other countries, but ultimately I knew the most about Japan, because I really enjoy Japanese culture, and this is where I tiptoed around anime, and I was just like, I watch a lot of Japanese movies, and I think the behavior of the public, or the sort of just general culture, is so different and interesting. And I mentioned I really like horror movies, and there's a lot of good horror roots that come from Japan. And then one of the interviewers asked me if I'd seen Sadako versus Kayako, which just by complete coincidence I had seen the week before, not in preparation and by any means. And I was like, oh yeah, I did. It was really bad because I hated that movie.
Oh man!
And then he laughed, and I was like, "Yes, banter. This is good. This is going well."
Banter is important, boys and girls. If your interviewers are laughing with you, you're doing good.
Yeah, it's okay. It's a formal interview, but it can have some back and forth.
Mine felt more like just a very nice conversation.
Yeah. Do you want to go through your questions now?
Yeah. So I got asked why Japan. And, you should know this, but for me, despite knowing I would be asked this, I found that question really hard to not be like, because anime.
Because you didn't have set prepared answers like I did.
No, I knew I had to think about it, but I didn't want to. The reason I didn't prepare any answers is I didn't want to sit there and be like, I'm gonna rattle this off from the top of my head. I don't want to just do a scripted answer, but I just remember telling them I had an interest in the Japanese education system. Which, if you genuinely do, now is a good time to research about that. That's actually really important, especially this year, because what you'll be coming into, there's going to be loads of changes. They threw me a real curveball with the next question, which, again, this is very specific to me. And it was, you have a very medical background. And they looked at my application again. It's like, it says here you're doing biomedical sciences, and also that you have a master's in anatomy and education. Why do you suddenly want to teach English? And I remember, when I wrote my personal statement, I knew that question was going to come. And I didn't prepare for it. I fully did not prepare for it. And I was just sat there like, oh no. And I had to really think about it.
Sorry to cut in. It's okay, this is just generic interview advice, but it's okay to take a few seconds to think. You don't need to immediately jump into an answer, because you don't want to start rambling just for the sake of talking. Yeah. You're good at thinking on the spot. You're good with words, so you managed to get out of it. Pretty much.
I knew it was coming. I still didn't prepare for it, and again, I'm good at bullshitting. That's kind of what I do. But I got out of it pretty easily, and I think, the most important thing to take from that is if you feel like you are stumped. Despite what Jakub said, sometimes rambling can help.
I feel like that's very specific to the person, though. Some people are good at that, and some people just aren't. And personally, I couldn't rely on that. I would have done crap.
And then the next question they asked me, I got through that question pretty much fine. I was all right. But the next question they asked me was another goddamn curveball. My God, I think my interview went well, but I think it was kind of tough. They then asked me so the Japanese interviewer, her English is fine. Her English is really good. But she asked me this question in a very roundabout, very Japanese kind of way. And to kind of paraphrase, she was basically asking me, how would you promote Japan to other people? I have a background in medicine, but I also really like history. I used to work at the Tower of London. And I know a bit about Japanese history. So the first thing that comes to my mind is Oda Nobunaga. And specifically I said, I've worked at the Tower of London, I've worked with Japanese tourists, I'm able to, explain London, so I feel like it'd be easy to do that with my friends. I could talk about Oda Nobunaga. She zoomed in on that. She fully zoomed in, what do you know about Oda Nobunaga? And I was just sat there like, oh no. I should have just mentioned anime. I was like, he was a really famous samurai. And I think just having specific knowledge about Japan that specifically interests you helps.
Might be worth just doing a little bit of research into some random things about Japan, and have some random like fun facts you can bring out?
Like literally, like just find something Japanese, read the Wikipedia page the
You
day or
gold.
week before, and then somehow try and shove it in there. Literally, like yeah, shove it in. Like that's what I did for me. Like that's how I got through that question. So and then did they ask you like how would you plan a lesson?
No, they didn't ask it. That's it. Yeah, I mean, one thing I had prepared for was that I heard some people get asked to do like a demonstration lesson almost, and like stand up and like pretend you're doing a self-introduction or something. And I prepared for that, but I didn't get anything like that. So.
Okay, yeah. So I got asked that. I got asked, how would you make a lesson for kids in Japan? I was like, what do you want me to teach them? I was like, oh, anything. I was like, So they're trying to do, I guess, in that situation, they're trying to figure out how can you simplify your English and make it interesting and so on. And blah, blah, blah.
I don't know, because
It varies. That's how I took it.
Okay, fair enough.
That's how I took it.
Like this is our experience, but it can change from year to year.
Yeah.
So we don't know what's gonna happen for sure
Yeah.
for you guys. So we've covered what we did to prepare.
Nothing.
In some cases, nothing.
Nothing.
Advice we would give, and the questions we were asked in an interview, and that bullshit English test.
It's really not that hard.
No, it's not that hard. It's straight up not hard. Anyway, yeah, we've covered that.
Summarize all of the advice we have bullshitted our way through today.
So our advice varied a little bit, and again, you need to think about the kind of person you are and what works for you. But in general, I would just say, be prepared for all possible questions, practice as much as you can with as big a variety of people as you can. You don't need to have word for word memorized answers, but you should have points you can pick up on ready to go that you can talk about. And
read your personal statement.
yeah, go over your application and know it like the back of your hand, and
mention anime at every possible opportunity.
every second word you say should be the word anime. Sushi,
Yeah,
that's a good one.
You gotta talk about how much
Keywords.
you love sushi and ramen, and how you want to be the ultimate ramen master.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's a good place to leave it. And I have other videos where I'm talking about the JET program, and I'll continue to do so, as well as just post general videos of the random shit that we get up to. Hope you're having a fun time over the holiday period, and I will see you next week, hopefully. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. And now cut to you putting in cereal to your coffee as the credits come up.
You know what? If the Japanese can put cornflakes in their sundaes, I can put cereal in my coffee. It's true. It's weird. I tried talking about it with my teachers, and like, of course, like cornflakes go in sundaes. Like, why the fuck would what? In what world does that make sense?